This video is simple. A list of steps we think World of Warcraft needs to take if it's going to recover, grow, and then serve more of its player base. Now, Friday's news on patch 9.1.5 is a real good start. This is in fact the third draft of this video, and a few of the things that we outlined in the first two drafts have sort of begun. First off, we've got the team hiring up, and we've also got the new Blizzard lead, Mike Ybarra, co-lead, taking to Twitter and Twitch and talking about the game. And then, of course, we've got Friday's big update. Basically, we've been promised a whole ton of stuff that the game has needed. Of course, it is absolutely far too late, but we're in this situation, and a good thing is still a good thing, even if it's not ideal. And a number of Blizzard developers have also alluded to this being a serious enough commitment to improving, one that of course we will have to hold them to. Now let's try to run with this momentum. What should they do next? Step one is acknowledgement, and, well, look, this is where we have to have a difficult conversation here. Their development update was almost exactly what a lot of players wanted to hear, perhaps transparently so, but there is a problem. They doubled down on their original decision-making, especially regarding Covenants, rather than admit that they were just wrong. Just look at their language. On the Covenant switching, they say they were revisiting player feedback in the context of the patch 9.1 story of the Covenants working together, and that is why they decided to, quote, reevaluate their approach. The original reason for pulling the ripcord was largely focused, I'd say entirely focused, on mechanical aspects of the game. Feedback largely agreed that an aesthetic-based Covenant lock would make sense at the time, and that it was the Covenant abilities that were the problem. But Blizzard are conveniently ignoring that to weave their own narrative, and I do not accept it. If they continue to defend their own choices, despite clear disagreement from the community as far back as beta, then we have no solid reason to believe that their next designs won't suffer from the same problems. This bit, especially this bit of that post, is a gigantic elephant in the room, and it is one that still has not been addressed. Acknowledgement means understanding how we got here in the first place, as well as a plan to get out. And we've oddly enough only got the latter. But I think players care about the former, because we've seen them make the same mistakes again and again and again. And we don't just want to see a nice little fix, something we asked for. We want to see that they actually understand. So here's the solution. Lock Ian in a room with a typewriter and don't let him out until he has written a comprehensive post with his genuine thoughts on what went wrong. We all know stuff went wrong. He is the game director for a live MMORPG, and communicating the direction of the game to players is indeed one of the most important parts of that. Please, Ian, how did we get here? How did your team deal with Covenant feedback in the way that it did? And we've all seen the post-launch stats. There's no fooling us. There's no weasel words like the words found in the 9.1.5 post. I have to be responsible to the people who watch these videos. And just buying that hook, line, and sinker absolutely is not in line with me being responsible. We need to know. Step 2 then. We know a lot of Blizzard developers cannot be trusted to use Twitter, including stories I know that aren't exactly public, but they are a little while ago, of people doing things such as going into the DMs of people in the community and flaming them. That actually led to Blizzard, well, sort of shutting down their Twitter policy. Ah dear, this is not a cute little personality trait of a company. This is a failing of a live game team. Because right now, there is no reliable avenue for developer-to-player communication, because as we know, the Warcraft dev's Twitter account that says it is official design insights from the Warcraft development team, well, very much does not provide that. The community will be highlighting issues, be that on live, on PTR, or in beta, and we basically get nothing but silence. On Twitter, Mike Ybarra said, "What do you want to hear? We're all certainly listening." Well, from the player's perspective, many of us actually do doubt that you're listening, but quite a lot of us know that you do have channels to get info and that you are listening. But without any action or response, it doesn't mean much. If it takes your game losing, half of its active endgame populace, there and abouts, amid an avalanche of negative feedback, for you to almost admit that our feedback from over a year ago was in fact correct a year ago, which, by the way, it was, time has proven us right, then why should we bother giving you feedback at all? Why should we log on to your PTR? Thanks for the effort, but this is the first step on a long road to recovery. And by the way, WoW dev team, Mike Ybarra did, I believe, remove the AoE cap in his stream, so listen to your boss. Now, imagine if, a week after the February BlizzCon of this year, a CM dropped this message. "Hey everyone, we heard your feedback on customizations, and we've thrown together a strike team to address your concerns. We'll bring more info to you as we figure out our plans." And then maybe a week, 2 weeks, or a month later, you get a follow-up post, maybe saying that due to technical and production limitations, it'll take a bit longer to get the customization in for all races. However, over the course of Shadowlands, we'll get the existing allied races brought up to par. Just imagine a world where communications like that, and by the way, that's what we should expect, and we should not accept less. Imagine if that was the norm for World of Warcraft. That is what the CM team should be able to do by default. So give them the resources and the access to the developers to do that. Silence is not normal, it is a failure. Now, to their credit, Lynx's recent posts and Kyvax's post on the Sylvanas lag, those are a good effort, as are the handful of developers reaffirming the developer updates promises. More of that, please. This cannot be a short-term love bomb, because you guys have been woeful at this for multiple years. So it can't just be, the players are sad, it's 9.1.5, let's do some communications to make them happy. This needs to continue for as long as World of Warcraft is a product. Simple as that. Now this is the real meat. How can they fix up the game starting right now? Well, before Friday, this section was all about freeing up Covenant swapping, removing conduit energy, and making alts way easier to play. So we had to scrap that section because they've promised those things. But they have asked for feedback, so let's give them some more feedback. Shadowlands needs to feel closer to a 0.3 patch more than ever before. Covenant swapping, instant renown catch-up, Maw and campaign skips, no more conduit energy. These are all great things. But when I think about what stops me from playing alts, I also maybe think about conduits and legendaries. Legendary recycling is a great idea for smoothing out balance changes, but it doesn't solve the problem for multiple specs or alts. Feeling like you've got to purchase a WoW token for real money and then do Torghast Weekly for ages to afford a legendary for a different spec is a massive accessibility problem for the legendary system. And I think changes here, look, it drastically inhibits people's ability to play the game the way they want to. So make legendaries easier to craft, drastically reduce the soul ash and cinder cost because that's stuff silly anyway, and you might actually see people engaging and enjoying the legendary system because the fun of that system, ideally, is mixing and matching your different legendaries and your different builds and having fun with the toys, not sitting around trying to earn the toys by doing boring chores and perhaps even having to pull out your credit card because of how gold is working out right now. And the same goes for conduits. Acquisition and upgrading is still a nightmare. Moving them to be spec-specific for the upgrades is a start, but it's still random. Seriously, why? What does it add to the player experience? Nothing but frustration. So make upgrades targetable. and allow people to buy low item level conduits for anima. There's value in making people work for things, yes, but the resounding feedback from the Shadowlands expansion is that there is just too much work to do one character and feel like that character is up to snuff, never mind multiple characters or perhaps even multiple specs on the same character. I think most of us were happiest in this game when all we had to do was level up and then get gear. So what was wrong with that? Just eliminate as much randomness as is possible. World of Warcraft built its player base by being a world full of virtual work, not by being a virtual casino. Fix that. The last short-term fix then. Rethink the Great Vault for patch 9.2 and be careful what you do with raid gear. The loot loop of the game completely falls to shreds when the optimal way to play for, say, a heroic raider, which is, I think, a lot of people, certainly more heroic raiders than mythic raiders, when the optimal way for a heroic raider to play is actually mostly doing unrewarding content in Mythic Plus so that you then hope that the magic box next week won't disappoint you. Now, that's not to say the Mythic Plus can't be fun, but gear acquisition is overly complicated and reliant on RNG with almost no fallback, with more exceptions than rules. The more I think about player dissatisfaction, the more I think the core incentive of this game is actually failing players, but that we're all too distracted by talking about other systems to pay attention to that very core issue that the game faces. So that must be looked at. Long term, the path WoW needs to make is a long one, but all journeys start with a single step in the right direction. Also, a quick disclaimer. The actual execution of all these things needs to actually be good, because World of Warcraft, in terms of quality of implementation, has not been that good recently. Quests have not been as fun, encounters have been mixed, balance has not been solid. So step number one, most important of all, is that the team be afforded the time and the resources to make a better game. That does include making a game that is fundamentally more balanceable so that they can spend their time actually iterating on polish. Okay, let's get into the meat of this long-term path to success. Let's get the design philosophy stuff out of the way. Earlier, I mentioned virtual work. Now, there is a difference between work and a job. World of Warcraft used to be a place to work, but more and more it is designed like a job. You can opt in to working at a hobby and have a lot of fun, but some people find when they turn a hobby into a job, they stop having fun. Now, the difference here is that a job, for many, is something they need to do in order to do what they want to do. Whereas work is different. We humans are wired to enjoy work. We do a thing, we see the result, we get good brain chemicals. World of Warcraft used to be full of opportunities for virtual work for our characters, but now we clock into a virtual job for Blizzard and are lucky if we get the time to work on what we want to do afterwards. Stop designing around need and start designing around want. What's the player's goal and what obstacles and gameplay can you design for us to overcome? Don't force us to do things, let us do things. How does the song go? If you love someone, set them free. If your game is good enough, a player won't need to be chained to it, for player power, to play the game. Because chaining just breeds resentment. But what does that actually mean in-game? Right? Well, instead of tying everything to player power, like in Korthia or with Renown, focus on things that we want but don't need. That means cosmetic rewards that are hard or time-consuming to get, and as a result, come with prestige. And please, make the grinds more deterministic. The content needs to either be unique and fun, like the deaths of Chromie, or something where progress comes from existing gameplay that people want to do otherwise. Imagine a mythic dungeon clear giving you a tiny amount of progress towards a quest for a unique tabard for your spec. Maybe you get a class tabard for unlocking all of the spec ones. Would some people just spam Mythic plus zeros to get it done quickly? Sure. Is that going to be a problem for most people? No. It would be a non-player power goal for people to slowly work towards, and it would help to populate the dungeons as a result. If you got it early, you would look and feel good. If you had multiple of them, then people would know that you mean business. You worked for it. Isn't that the dream? That's a lot of the core. As for what that means in terms of content, well, I could talk for years about that. But let's go and talk about some content. The next step should be towards content and a variety of it. Blizzard needs to look at their production pipeline, and they need to prioritize improving it. I cannot tell you what is wrong, but I can tell you that the last time we had an acceptable amount of content at a reasonable pace was the Legion expansion. So they either need to spend the money, the time, or the effort, or maybe all of those things, to let us have a reasonable amount of content for the amount of money we're paying for this game experience. From the player's perspective, the game drastically lacks things to do. There are few long-term goals that are worth chasing, and the only relevant content is the same endgame dungeons from launch, the new raid, and PvP. Near everything else, as far as players are concerned, is either a chore or not fun enough to bother with. I'm sure there are some people that look at Korthia, they look at their bar and all the things, and they want to fill the bar and all the things. But I'll also tell you that for many people who play video games, sitting in the middle of a zone, waiting for a rare to spawn, running to the rare, and with basically zero gameplay killing it, and then running back to the middle of the zone to wait for the next rare, that does not constitute playing a video game for the vast majority of people who play video games. That can't be WoW's default outdoor content. The game has very obviously moved to the esportsy, session-based gameplay direction over time. And in a way that is fine, but the world of Warcraft needs to be supported as well. Blizzard have essentially forgotten the players who are there for the world of Warcraft, not just the gameplay of Warcraft. So where is the Deaths of Chromie? Where is the Mage Tower? Where is Greenfire? Where is class quests? Where are profession quests? Where is the next equivalent to Suramar? Where the hell is the other content? Make it a priority. Now this is going to be the hardest thing for the team to pivot towards, because it is something they've never done. We need to play the game, not the expansion. Even at a base philosophical level, spending years making content that is only going to be thrown out is exceedingly short-sighted, and that will be the death of a live game. Why play if your progress only lasts a patch? And this whole thing of borrowed power and short-term progress has kind of just got worse and worse over time. So stop adding planned obsolescence into your design. Over 17 years of development time is utterly wasted in World of Warcraft right now. As an example, there's no way for a group to go back and do the utterly fantastic and exquisite Throne of Thunder in a way that feels right. Spend the money, get the engineers, train them up, and revive the old content. Solve the balance problems so that it feels like heroic. Throw an option on Lore Walker Cho so that you can do it just about any time, and make it reward an achievement, a title, and a token that maybe you can trade in for an entire tier set transmog. Oh, you've just done the long-term work, and now you can apply that to other content in the future, meaning that people have got a fun activity to do as a group, and one where they'll be rewarded without taking up artists' time. Would everybody do this with Throne of Thunder? No, they wouldn't. But that's the point. To have a varied player base, you need varied activities. Think along these lines. How do you effectively reuse old content? Expand time walking. Perhaps build with time walking in mind. Put new things in-game that you can update easily every few patches. Imagine if the Deaths of Chromie was updated from time to time with a new zone, new enemies, and maybe an update to the storyline. Do some real unique narrative design there. Imagine the same but for class halls. Make them our home point, our consistent base of operations, and maybe, when a new expansion comes, our class order will set up a forward camp in whatever region we're in, but our class halls would always be where our characters belong. We want our 17 years of history in the game to matter, not to be reset every 2 years. So why aren't our characters' achievements recognized? I get it's hard to do, but it's worth it, so sort it out. And need I even mention other things like player housing? Sure, they won't appeal to everybody, but again I will say, in order to have a big game, you'll probably need a decently varied player base. And if you want a varied player base, you have to have varied content. It can't just be a bunch of people from the elitist jerks forums making Mythic Plus dungeons and raids with the bare minimum of world content, while PvP is almost forgotten about in terms of how it feels, specifically in terms of content. Hey, that talent patch was pretty sweet, but why are there so few battlegrounds, so few arenas? No PvP hubs for the PvPers to hang out in. I mean, come on. This is a virtual world after all. I think you guys get the picture for this point. Now, this is an elephant that's been in the room since vanilla. It needs to be talked about all the same, though. Class balance. It's honestly a miracle that many Mistweaver, Enhancement, and Survival mains haven't just left the game outright. Substantial balance issues have a real impact on acceptance rates to Mythic Plus, raids, and as a result, the experience of the player. Sure, it might be nice for the survival hunters to be a bit more in vogue right now, but historically, it's been a rough enough time for them. Blizzard traditionally pass off this class balance stuff as a community perception issue, but that is a very weak excuse to make the same mistake again every patch. Yeah, there's an element of truth in community perception, but we need to be real about why that happens. If we had an expansion without Azerite or conduits, but everyone got to play the specs they liked the most, players would be way, way happier. There's a lot of criticisms for Warlords of Draenor, but I know a lot of people appreciated just being able to do the content they want on their class, without having all of the needless junk thrown on top. So, with balance and with systems, make the sacrifices, bury your ego as systems designers, and just give it a try. It can't hurt. This one is a little bit less of a step they can take, and more a sticky note they need to put underneath their monitors. So much of World of Warcraft feels designed for engagement and not for experience. And that's how we got here. At every step of the design stage, think about how players will feel, not about how players will behave. Because surprisingly enough, if you can design how they feel, their behavior will be easier to predict and the results you want will come. Also, how they feel is just more important in the long term. That's why we get into games, to make people feel good, to give them experiences they want. Right away, that means eliminating randomness where possible. Give us deterministic outcomes for near everything except loot acquisition in the initial stage, and give us a way to be, perhaps, efficient and slow, or inefficient and fast. Let us no-life stuff, but keep player power out of the picture. In the longer term, it means think about quests and how content makes us feel. How much better would Tyronda's moment in the Korthia campaign be if Tyronda had have actually felt dangerous in that quest? The same could go for Sylvanas. For being such an epic showdown, apparently, you just zone in and she's there. You're making a game. Make us play and feel the story. Otherwise, it's a waste. Story. Let's talk about that. This is one of the most important ones. So far, we've been focusing on the game rather than the lore. But it is clear that the lore is extremely important to many, if not most people. And even the people who don't care about the story and the characters, they care about the setting. They were drawn to Azeroth for a reason, and even though they don't know every detail, it feels homely to them. And that's a good thing. Near everyone I've talked to is clamoring for a return to Azeroth, a return to simpler times. So what can Blizzard do? Okay. Wrap up Shadowlands in as exciting a way as you can, and as simple a way as you can, and then put a complete halt on introducing new concepts. Complete total halt. Yeah, it'll cost us lore speculation videos, but that's fine. Let's be real though, that's not the only problem. It's that the link wasn't established with Shadowlands. We were never really given a reason to care. Shadowlands related stuff was a C- tier plot at best in Battle for Azeroth. It was only lightly hinted at, and then it was jammed in our face after a very unsatisfying conclusion to patch 8.3, which itself came out of left field. Not in terms of its logical setup, but in terms of the experience. It was too fast, it did not last long enough, and it had an extremely lame conclusion to a very much hyped up villain. It doesn't help that we were led to the afterlife by Sylvanas when her motives were mysterious and impenetrable and included in a book that releases February 2022. When we got there, we were told about so many new concepts that it's nigh unrecognizable. The afterlife isn't what anyone thought it was. We, at least at launch, don't know who our true villain is as a person with, emotions and a character. We don't know anyone's real big motive or goal because everything is shrouded in mystery. Our favorite characters really aren't actually doing anything. I mean, seriously, what has Bolvar done? And whenever we get the lore reveals, they're purposefully baity and mysterious. Great for me as a content creator, not great for me, and I think you, as players. World of Warcraft needs to slow down drastically. Story decisions are being made for short-term emotional impact in a cinematic, but without actually, in many cases, resonating with players, and we just feel like narrative binballs. We need to vaguely understand the premise of an expansion before we go in. We need to develop a strong cast of characters throughout the patches and actually give them lots of time in the story. And then we need to have a satisfying conclusion that all of our cast are a part of. Storytelling basics. I mean, hey, this is the Blizzard that forgot to have Illidan actually speak to his brother and Tyrande in Legion. If Blizzard massively increased how much content we get per plot point, then we would be able to appreciate what is going on in the writer's room. I think one of the reasons why people have gravitated towards the lore content that we do is that we help surface what we think the writers are going for, and then people can understand it and engage with it. That should not be happening on my YouTube channel. That should be happening in the game we're playing. Right now, it feels like they are high on their own supply, that they are under-delivering, and that they are basically giving us the cliff notes of a story that's far more fascinating in their own heads than it is in their game. And we're just left scratching our heads a bit. World of Warcraft is now one of the worst MMORPGs on the market for storytelling techniques in-game. Both Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy XIV beat World of Warcraft, and while I haven't played it recently, many are saying similar about Elder Scrolls Online. Hopefully this has not been too exciting. That might seem odd to you, but we've tried to keep this stuff relatively realistic. Like, the direction we'd push in if we had control of the project starting tomorrow, but, didn't have a blank slate. Also, there's a lot more we could have talked about. This video could have been like 20,000 words long and 2 hours long. We'll get some of those other ideas and things out later. Some of this, the changes I mean, is probably difficult for technical reasons that perhaps we have underestimated because we don't have a complete perspective. But you know what? We're goddamn customers, and I'm not really interested in that. I am not interested in what is easy to do, what is hard to do, what is too expensive to do, because it needs to be done. World of Warcraft needs to put the work in if it wants to come back from its current position, and you know what? I think Activision Blizzard is a very big company. I think it has a lot of money. I mean, surely it seems it's got enough money to shred evidence of its internal bad things that have been going on, because it's cheaper to pay the fine than it is to, actually have their bad deeds, your property be dragged out or whatever. They've got money to burn whenever it makes sense. How about they invest it more in development? So do you agree here? Do you have any other ideas? What do you want? And this is maybe what makes you feel bad in the game right now? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel bad in other games? And what makes you feel good in other games? Talk about how content makes you feel. The developers should want to make you feel good, and hopefully that's something they'll listen to. That's it for me. Thanks to you for watching. Let me know how you think we can make this game better, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.